Welcome to Strange America. You've just survived a Costco run. Your cart is packed with a 48-pack of toilet paper, enough paper towels to supply a small office, a rotisserie chicken you definitely did not plan on buying, and somehow 3 other things that were never on your list. You pay, start heading toward those giant exit doors, and then there it is, the final checkpoint. An employee reaches for your receipt, gives your card a quick look, draws a little mark on the paper, and sends you on your way. It usually takes only a few seconds, but if you've ever stood in that exit line thinking, I already paid, why are they checking me again? You're definitely not the only one. The interesting part is that Costco's receipt check is not simply an employee trying to catch customers sneaking out with stolen merchandise. In many cases, the person at the door is also looking for checkout mistakes, an item that may have been missed, something that may have been scanned twice, or a large product sitting underneath the cart that was easy to overlook at the register. Costco moves an enormous amount of merchandise through busy warehouses every day. And when hundreds or even thousands of shoppers are pushing oversized carts through checkout, small mistakes can happen surprisingly easily. So that little receipt inspection at the exit is partly about protecting the store, partly about making sure the transaction is accurate, and partly about the unusual way Costco operates as a membership warehouse. Costco itself describes receipt verification as a standard practice at its warehouse locations. The company says the purpose is to double-check that purchases were processed correctly, that members were charged properly, and that the warehouse can maintain accurate inventory. That may sound like corporate language, but the idea becomes much easier to understand when you look at the way people actually shop there. A normal grocery cart might contain 20 or 30 smaller items sitting neatly inside the basket. A Costco cart can look more like somebody is moving out of an apartment. You may have a giant bag of dog food underneath, a case of bottled water on the bottom rack, 2 boxes stacked sideways, a television balanced across the top, and a tray of croissants occupying the one remaining square foot of available space. That creates a very different checkout problem. Cashiers are working quickly, members are unloading what they can, assistants may be moving large items around the cart, and some products are simply too big or too awkward to place on the conveyor belt. One missed scan does not always mean somebody was trying to steal. Sometimes it means a bulky package was hiding behind another bulky package. Sometimes the barcode did not get scanned. Sometimes 2 identical items were in the cart, but the register only recorded 1. And sometimes the opposite happens. An item gets scanned twice. From the member's point of view, that second mistake is especially important. The person at the exit is not only checking whether Costco lost money, the check can also reveal that you paid for something you did not actually buy twice. Imagine a Saturday afternoon at a busy warehouse outside Phoenix. The parking lot already feels like a competitive sport. Inside, carts are moving in every direction. Free samples have created tiny traffic jams, and somewhere near the bakery, a family is having a serious discussion about whether 12 muffins count as a reasonable purchase. By the time you reach checkout, you are ready to leave. Your cart has a case of sparkling water on the bottom, a large package of paper towels, frozen food, snacks, and a few smaller items. The cashier scans everything, you pay, and you head for the door. The receipt checker notices that the large case on the bottom of the cart does not appear on the receipt. That is exactly the kind of simple error the exit check is designed to catch. Now, reverse the situation. Suppose the cashier accidentally scans your expensive package of steaks twice. You may not notice because you are loading the cart, watching the total, answering a question, or trying to remember where you parked. At the door, an employee compares the receipt with what is actually in the cart and sees a quantity that does not make sense. Instead of you discovering the mistake later at home, the problem can be corrected while you are still in the building. That is one reason the receipt check makes more sense when you stop thinking of it as a miniature police interrogation and start thinking of it as a final accuracy check on a very fast-moving warehouse transaction. There is also the inventory side of the equation. Retail inventory sounds boring until you realize how much money depends on it. A store needs to know what came in, what was sold, what was returned, what was damaged, and what should still be sitting on a pallet somewhere in the building. If the computer thinks there are 40 units of an item but the warehouse only has 36, somebody eventually has to figure out why. Maybe products were damaged, maybe counts were entered incorrectly, maybe several items left without being scanned, maybe there was theft. One small discrepancy is not a crisis, but thousands of small discrepancies across a large retail operation can become a serious problem. Costco's business model makes accuracy especially important because the company operates differently from a traditional department store. The warehouses usually carry a more limited selection of products than a giant supermarket or big box retailer, but they sell many of those products in high volume and large package sizes. Pallets of merchandise can move quickly. If the inventory system says a popular item is available when the physical stock is actually gone, employees and customers both feel the problem. A member might drive across town expecting to find something that the system suggests should be there, only to discover an empty space where the pallet used to be. Accurate checkout information helps keep the numbers closer to reality. And then, there is the obvious reason everyone thinks about first: theft prevention. Yes, the receipt check can make it harder for unpaid merchandise to leave the warehouse. If a person somehow gets an item past the register without paying for it, a second set of eyes at the exit creates another chance to notice. But reducing the entire process to "Costco thinks everyone is stealing" misses the bigger picture. Costco openly frames the check around correct processing, proper charges, and inventory accuracy. Theft prevention can be part of the practical effect, but the routine is broader than simply searching for shoplifters. That distinction matters because the experience feels very different depending on how you interpret it. If you think the employee is staring at you because you look suspicious, the check can feel personal. If you understand that almost everyone leaving with warehouse purchases is being checked, it becomes more like one final step in the Costco system. You show a membership card to shop, you move through a warehouse designed around bulk buying, you check out, and you show the receipt on the way out. It is not a special procedure created because you bought 6 pounds of shredded cheese with nervous energy. It is part of the routine. In fact, Costco's membership conditions specifically say that receipts and merchandise are inspected as members leave the warehouse. That is an important difference between Costco and the mental picture many people have of an ordinary store. Costco is a membership club. You agree to a set of membership rules when you join, and the exit inspection is included in those rules. So the receipt checker is not inventing a new requirement at the door because the line happens to be short. The practice is built into the way the warehouse operates. This also explains one of the strangest parts of the experience: the mark on the receipt. Depending on the location and employee, you might see a line, a slash, initials, a symbol, or sometimes a little drawing. For adults, this is just proof that the receipt has already been checked. For children, however, the Costco exit can suddenly become an art gallery. Some employees have become known for drawing simple smiley faces or little doodles on receipts for kids. A child who spent 40 minutes asking for snacks may leave the warehouse feeling like the best part of the trip was a 2-second face drawn on a piece of thermal paper. Retail psychology is powerful. The mark also serves a practical purpose. If there were no indication that a receipt had already been checked, somebody could potentially walk back into the building, move around, and then present the same receipt again while leaving. A visible mark makes it easier for employees to recognize that the transaction has already passed through the exit. It is a tiny control, but retail systems often depend on tiny controls working together. The receipt, the membership account, the register record, the cart inspection, and the exit mark all create a chain that is easier to track than one single moment at checkout. Of course, most receipt checks are fast. Employees are not normally standing there conducting a line-by-line audit of every jar of pasta sauce you bought. They are typically looking for obvious mismatches, high-value items, quantities, large merchandise, and products that may have been left in or under the cart. If you have 20 items, they are not necessarily reading 20 lines like an accountant preparing for tax season. The skill is often in recognizing patterns quickly. Does the cart look roughly consistent with the receipt? Are the large items accounted for? Are there duplicate quantities that seem unusual? Is there something obvious in the cart that does not appear to have been processed? That is why the check can take 5 seconds for one person and a little longer for another. A cart with 3 clearly visible items is easy. A flatbed stacked with office supplies, cases of drinks, electronics, and giant food packages takes more attention. The employee is making a quick comparison under time pressure while a line of people forms behind you. Nobody wants the warehouse exit to become airport security. Costco needs the check to be useful without turning every shopping trip into a 20-minute investigation. And Costco customers are not exactly famous for buying small quantities. The entire environment encourages scale. You do not buy a bag of chips, you buy a bag large enough to have its own zip code. You do not buy batteries because one remote stopped working. You buy enough batteries to prepare for a decade of remotes. You walk in needing milk and somehow leave, considering whether your home has space for a commercial-style shelving unit. Large transactions make a quick second check more valuable because a single mistake can be hidden inside a cart containing hundreds of dollars in merchandise. Another important point is that checkout accuracy protects the relationship between the member and the warehouse. Costco depends heavily on membership. People pay for access because they expect a certain kind of value and experience. If customers repeatedly discovered that they had been overcharged, double-charged, or sent home with confusing transactions, trust would suffer. The exit check gives Costco a chance to catch certain mistakes before the member reaches the parking lot. That does not mean every pricing error will be caught at the door, but it adds another layer of quality control. Think about how annoying a small checkout mistake becomes once you're home. You unload the car, put the frozen food away, find space for the giant package of toilet paper, and finally look at the receipt. Then you notice something was charged twice. Now a 5-minute correction has turned into another drive, another parking search, and another visit to the membership desk. If the door check catches the mistake immediately, it saves the customer time and saves Costco from dealing with a problem later. The best error is the one that gets fixed before it follows you home. There is also a human factor that no retail technology completely eliminates. Barcodes are reliable, registers are sophisticated, and stores track transactions digitally, but people still do the physical work of moving merchandise through the checkout area. A cashier can make a mistake. A customer can forget an item under the cart. An assistant can think something was scanned when it was not. 2 workers can each assume the other person handled the same item. Technology reduces errors, but it does not magically turn a crowded Saturday checkout into a laboratory. Costco's famous warehouse layout also adds to the situation. Many products are not displayed like they would be in a traditional supermarket aisle. Merchandise may be stacked on pallets, packaged in large boxes, or sold in bundles. The cart itself often becomes a puzzle. Large items go on the bottom. Smaller items get tucked into corners. Clothing may be folded on top. A package can disappear behind another package, even though both are enormous. By the time the cart reaches the register, it may have been rearranged 3 or 4 times. The receipt checker sees the final version and provides one more visual comparison. There is a reason businesses build systems with more than one checkpoint. Banks do not rely on a single number for every security decision. Airlines do not depend on one person to handle every part of a flight. Restaurants often have someone other than the cook confirm an order before it reaches the customer. Whenever large volumes of people, products, or money move quickly, a second verification can catch mistakes that the first step misses. Costco's door check is a very visible version of that principle. Still, the psychology of the check is fascinating because Americans generally expect that once they pay for something, the transaction is finished. You hand over the money, receive the receipt, and mentally switch from shopper to owner. Then Costco places one more employee between you and the parking lot. Even though the check is routine, that extra step can feel unusual. You can almost hear the internal monologue. "Sir, I have paid for this industrial quantity of mayonnaise. I would now like to begin my new life. The speed of that line is therefore part of the system. The check has to be quick enough that members tolerate it. If every receipt inspection took 3 minutes, the exit would become a permanent traffic jam. The process works because the employee is not starting from zero. The register has already processed the transaction. The receipt already contains the item information. The checker is performing a rapid comparison, not rebuilding the sale. Most customers move through in seconds, and the few carts with a problem can be pulled aside so the line keeps moving. What happens if there is a mismatch? Usually, the goal is simply to figure out what went wrong. An employee may direct the member to a supervisor, register, or service area so the transaction can be corrected. If an item was missed, it can be paid for. If an item was charged twice, the charge can be fixed. The exact procedure can vary by warehouse and situation, but an error at the door does not automatically mean a customer is being accused of a crime. In a high-volume store, mistakes are expected to happen occasionally, which is exactly why a checking system exists. This is an important detail because receipt check videos and arguments online can make the process look much more confrontational than the normal experience. Most Costco exits are not dramatic. There is no soundtrack. Nobody is delivering a courtroom speech about constitutional rights next to a pallet of bottled water. A member hands over the receipt, the employee looks at the cart, makes a mark, and the person leaves. The entire event may be shorter than the time you spent deciding whether to buy the giant cheesecake. The membership structure also changes the social expectation. People choose to join Costco because they want access to the warehouse, its pricing model, products, and services. In return, the company sets rules for membership and warehouse shopping. Receipt inspection is one of those rules. Members may not think about the fine details every time they walk in, but the system is not hidden. Costco publicly explains that purchase receipts are verified at the exit and connects the practice to correct processing and inventory accuracy. There is another reason the system fits Costco particularly well. The average visual difference between paid and unpaid merchandise can be hard to spot without a receipt. In a small convenience store, someone carrying one unpaid drink is obvious if employees are watching closely. At Costco, nearly everybody is pushing a mountain of merchandise toward the exit. The fact that a cart is full tells you nothing. A receipt gives the employee a quick reference point. Without it, the door employee would be looking at 50 giant items with no simple way to know what happened at checkout. Large ticket merchandise makes that second look more meaningful too. Costco can sell televisions, computers, appliances, jewelry, furniture, and other expensive products alongside groceries and household supplies. Not every high-value product is handled the same way, and procedures can vary, but the basic retail principle remains. The more value moving through a building, the more important transaction controls become. A missed $8 item is one thing. A missed item worth hundreds of dollars is something else entirely. At the same time, customers benefit when expensive purchases are accurately recorded. A clean transaction record can matter later if there is a return, warranty question, or account issue. Costco keeps purchase history tied to membership, and members can access many warehouse receipts through their accounts. The exit check is not what creates that digital record, but it belongs to the same larger system of connecting the physical merchandise to the recorded transaction. Retail may look like carts and cash registers on the surface, but behind it is a huge amount of data management. This is also why the phrase "checking the receipt" can be slightly misleading. The employee is really checking the relationship between two things, the receipt and the merchandise. A receipt by itself proves very little if nobody looks at the cart. A cart by itself tells you very little if nobody looks at the receipt. The value comes from comparing them. That is why an employee's eyes may move from the paper to the cart and back again. They are trying to see whether the two versions of the transaction match. Some members try to help by keeping the receipt ready instead of bearing it in a pocket, purse, or wallet. That tiny habit can make the exit smoother. If you know the check is coming, holding the receipt while you walk toward the door saves everyone from the classic scene where a person stops at the front of the line and suddenly begins an archaeological excavation of every compartment in a handbag. The receipt was in your hand 12 seconds ago. Now, it has apparently entered another dimension. You may also notice that door employees sometimes focus on certain parts of the cart first. Bottom racks deserve attention because they are easy to miss at checkout. Large items deserve attention because they may not have gone onto the belt. Multiples deserve attention because quantity errors happen. Again, the point is not that every warehouse employee follows an identical visible routine in every situation. The broader logic is that some merchandise creates a higher chance of accidental mismatch, so a fast checker learns where to look. There is a surprisingly elegant efficiency to this when it works well. Costco does not need to reopen every transaction. It does not need to count every item slowly. It does not need customers to unload their carts a second time. Instead, one employee can inspect a stream of receipts and carts near the exit, catching some errors with only a few seconds of additional time per member. In operations, a small process that prevents a percentage of larger problems can be valuable, even if it is not perfect. That warehouse feeling is part of the brand. Concrete floors, tall steel racks, pallets stacked high, giant carts, bulk packages, and simple displays all communicate efficiency and scale. The receipt check fits that environment because it feels operational rather than ceremonial. You are moving through a system designed to process an enormous amount of merchandise. The person at the door is essentially the final station before that merchandise enters the parking lot. If you shop there regularly, the process eventually becomes automatic. Membership card ready at the entrance, card acquired. Pretend you will only buy what is on the list. Abandon that plan somewhere near the seasonal section. Check out, grab the receipt, head to the door, show it, get the mark, leave. The first few visits may make the exit inspection feel unusual, but after enough trips, it becomes one more Costco ritual, like trying to fit a package the size of a coffee table into the trunk of a normal sedan. The deeper lesson is that retail systems are often built around preventing ordinary mistakes, not just stopping bad behavior. We tend to notice security measures because they feel directed at people, but many controls exist because humans are imperfect. Employees misscan things, customers overlook things. Software records what it is told, not what someone meant to do. A final check gives the system one more chance to notice a mismatch, while the evidence, the cart, the receipt, and the customer, is still in the same place. That is probably the best way to understand Costco's exit door. It is not really the end of a theft investigation, it is the last stage of the transaction. The register says what was sold. The cart shows what is leaving. The receipt checker compares those two stories and looks for anything that obviously does not match. When everything lines up, you get the famous mark and continue into the parking lot, where a completely different challenge begins, remembering which row contains your car. And if the employee does catch a mistake, the system has done what it was designed to do. Maybe Costco avoided losing an item that was never scanned. Maybe you avoided paying twice for something. Maybe the inventory record stays a little more accurate. None of those outcomes is dramatic enough for a viral video, but retail operations are built on thousands of boring little corrections that prevent larger problems later. So the next time you are standing at the Costco exit with your receipt in one hand and a cart containing enough cereal to survive a minor historical event, you know what is happening. The employee is not simply asking, "Did this person steal something?" The better question is, does what is leaving the warehouse match what the register says was purchased? That difference explains almost everything. It is about transaction accuracy, inventory control, loss prevention, and making sure members were charged correctly. The entire process may last only a few seconds, but it reflects a much larger business system. Costco sells in bulk, moves products quickly, relies on membership, tracks inventory closely, and processes enormous carts every day. A quick check at the door gives the company one final opportunity to catch the kinds of mistakes that naturally appear when that much merchandise is moving that fast. And because the rule is part of the membership experience, the exit check has become as recognizable as the warehouse shelves themselves. So yes, you paid. Yes, that giant box of frozen snacks is yours. And yes, someone still wants to see the receipt before you leave, not because Costco has suddenly forgotten that you were standing at a register 30 seconds earlier, but because one completed scan does not guarantee a perfect transaction. The door check is a second look, a simple control, and a final chance to make sure both you and the warehouse are leaving the transaction with the right numbers. That is why Costco checks your receipt before you leave. It is less mysterious than it looks, but once you understand the reason, that tiny mark at the door starts to represent a lot. Membership rules, inventory management, checkout accuracy, theft reduction, customer protection, and a retail operation built around moving huge amounts of merchandise with as few mistakes as possible. Then the doors open, you push your overloaded cart into the parking lot, and for one peaceful moment, you feel completely finished, until you remember you still have to load all of it into the car.